When she was in middle school, Konoha Sato wrote a story and gave the lovely heroine her name. It was a love magic fantasy adventure. Her mother barged in the room, scolding her because she wasn't studying. And Konoha didn't care. She spent her days writing her story non-stop, believing that one day she'd be summoned to another world. She didn't know when that would happen. So she decided to leave a letter in this one while she could. Writing this story was practice for when she went to another world. 10 years later, she'd get a phone call from her mother on her way back from work, asking about that very letter she wrote. Since Konoha didn't live at her parents' home anymore, her mother was looking to clean everything out of her room. And Konoha didn't mind. She had already taken everything she needed. But while remembering what that note was, Truck-kun claimed another victim. Recalling the story set in the magical kingdom, lived a heroine, a count's daughter named Konoha. Basically a self-insert. When her younger sister's potential fiancé, a young man named Genoford, visits, she meets him by chance in the garden. And for the both of them, it's love at first sight. But standing in the path of the two heroes was Konoha's younger sister, Iana. Iana was known for being a villainess to her core. Her jealousy, especially towards her sister, often got her in trouble. She found fault with everyone and had a terrible reputation. Iana will cause trouble. That was the reason Konoha and Genoford weren't allowed to meet openly, and also the reason they couldn't announce their betrothal. Even so, Konoha loved her younger sister. But Iana, being so spiteful, harassed Konoha in every way she could think of. Eventually, even her life became a target. One day, Iana received a book called The Dark History that caused whomever read it to collapse, and she cackled, knowing she would finally kill her big sister. However, the book would accidentally open onto her eyes, and as she squealed in anguish, thoughts and memories poured into her mind of the real world Konoha's letters and memories. The letter read, "Dear father, mother, I am no longer in this world. This is because I have a destiny to fulfill." The conclusion of the letter was her realizing she awakened as a saint. That would be the beginning of her tragic fate. Then, coming to, she'd be confronted by the knights. She remembered this scene. Iana would be under arrest for attempted murder of Konoha Magnolia. But Iana was the name of the villainess of the story she made up. Since she was Konoha Sato, she wondered why they were calling her Iana, the antagonist's name. She remembered being on the phone with her mother on the way home from work. Getting thrown in the slammer, she finally realized she's been reincarnated. This world was a product of her imagination that she created throughout middle and high school. In the prologue of The Dark History, Konoha, the heroine who had the same name as her, saved the world with many handsome men protecting her all the while. And now the person she reincarnated into was the heroine's enemy, the evil younger sister, Iana. Konoha rushed into the cell to embrace her. She was so worried having heard the police arrested her sister and held out her hand to bring her home. Real Konoha couldn't believe the Konoha she wrote was in front of her. She smelled nice and her voice was so pretty. She gushed over fictional Konoha's angelicness. Rushing over and pulling out his sword was Genoford Dandelion. Iana was shocked seeing the main hero was here. Gino told Konoha to stand back, asking why Iana hadn't been killed yet. But of course, with the way Konoha was written, she'd always defend her beloved little sister. Still, he'd point his blade at her, reminding Konoha of the night Iana snuck an assassin into her carriage at the ball, paid a servant to poison the drinks, spread baseless rumors throughout the manor that caused trouble, and tried to destroy her mind using the dark history. Also, she switched out Konoha's horse for a cow. Dang, real Konoha was kinda feeling proud for writing all that, but now wondered what she did in her past life to deserve this villainous reincarnation. After being forced to watch the lovey-dovey protagonists, she was sent to an area on the border that the Count's family owned, where she was to stay under confinement for 3 months. She was thankful that fictional Konoha was so merciful towards her. This was a good opportunity for her to get used to this world. However, she then remembered Iana was supposed to be killed in confinement by a man hired by the Count's family. Uh-oh, she was destined for death. When that man was a child, he was sold as a slave, and Konoha saved him. He's been in love with Konoha ever since, and hoped that he could protect her. Being escorted around the manor, she'd quickly find all the servants were scared of her until she was introduced to the dazzling 17-year-old Sol Nemophila, her personal attendant, and the man who would kill her. She wondered if anyone was stupid enough to live with someone they knew would kill them. But of course there wasn't. As he approached, she stepped back. She cried internally, not wanting to die. He was both aloof and cordial, offering to get her a warm drink. And with him gone, she plopped onto the table to breathe a sigh of relief, but then remembered she wasn't safe. If she wanted to survive, she had to remember all the world building for the story. This world didn't just have humans, but also angels, demons, ninjas, and samurai. That aside, she needed to figure out something or she'd be killed. And while contemplating what to do, Soul returned with a knife behind his back. She cut off his attack to tell him she wanted to write her sister a letter. She was so scared because his footsteps didn't make a sound. She giggled and made pleasantries as he served her tea, thinking about how she had to make choices carefully to avoid death. From now on, she'd live as Iana, the normal daughter of a count, and marry some bland nobleman, and live peacefully. But first, she needed to avoid Soul killing her. The first thing she needed to do was show that she approved of Jinaford and Konoha's marriage, then apologize for all her offensiveness and distance herself from the dark history. While she wrote vigorously, Soul contemplated what she was thinking. Later, at Count Magnolia's residence, Gino looked at the letter that read, "I offer my congratulations on your future wedding." He knew this would certainly make Konoha happy, but he tore it up and threw it in the fire, thinking the contents were insincere. He couldn't believe Iana would have a change of heart now. Soul would point out his interactions with her as odd. She reacted to the slightest hint of bloodlust, and she had remarkable instinct. He believed they couldn't let their guard down, and surmised that was why Gino ordered her assassination under confinement. Soul came back to Iana, explaining Konoha was away on a trip with their uncle, as the excuse for why he didn't obtain a reply to her letter. Iana was wary, of course, because she didn't remember writing anything about an uncle. But then, it started to come back to her. When Konoha rescued Soul from the slave market, their uncle was there with her. She remembered the kind words Konoha told Soul the day she saved him, and recited them herself. "You're not a slave anymore. Soul, your beautiful hands aren't meant for dirty work." He was stunned. He questioned how she knew those words. But she didn't mean to blurt them out loud, and decided to flee back to her room, trying to remember more of the story. It came to her that their uncle was plotting to capture Konoha. Their uncle suffered unrequited love for their mother in their youth, and all he could do was bottle his feelings up. But when Konoha grew up, she looked exactly like her, and his twisted passion overflowed once again. He would lure Konoha to an abandoned village, wound Jinoford, and attempt to force himself onto her. But the shock would release the magic hidden away within her, and their uncle would be defeated. Then, to find a way to reawaken Jinoford, she gets caught up in trouble all over the world. Iana began to worry about her sister and Gino, but then remembered her own life was on the line. She needed to worry about herself first. But then, thinking about how much Konoha was worried about her, she felt she needed to do something. She stormed out of her room, trying to tell someone to get a horse to the capital, but was distraught with the fact that no one would even look at her. And then Soul approached. He told her the other servants had all their own work to do, and asked that she stop behaving like she did in the capital. She tried to object at first, but then walked away, remembering he was right, and that this was the world she created in her own dark history. In the real world, this was all a fantasy. She never considered that it was actually real for the characters. She was now bearing the responsibility for all her fantasies. She freaked out while riding on a horse. Even knowing in Iana's backstory, she should be proficient, but in her past life, she was terrified. Arriving at the church, Konoha was charmed by the historic site. Her uncle explained it had been a long time since his village was abandoned, and told Gino to leave his sword behind, since this place was sacred. Iana believed she'd make it in time. She thought about how she always wanted to be like Konoha, beautiful and pure, a girl loved by so many, with special powers and circumstances, being unrealistically dramatic. Seeing such a heroine in distress fired her up. But here, everything was real. She didn't want the wounds in the story to become wounds in reality. The uncle lunged his blade towards Gino, telling him to die. And Iana burst in at the nick of time and whacked him away with a sack of rocks she picked up earlier. She was glad she made it. Gino would be a little caught off guard, hearing Iana telling him to look after Konoha. Soon after, the uncle tried to attack her instead, but Soul would come to the rescue. He'd say, "Should the daughter of a noble be confronting a ruffian? It's quite unseemly, Lady Iana." He was so dashing in her eyes. She pulled away, and we learned he'd been following her since she left the manor. She felt guilt knowing the characters committed crimes that she had written in this story. Perhaps a bit self-indulgent, but she wanted to feel the weight of this responsibility. Gina would approach her later, asking if she knew about her uncle's fixation with Konoha, and if that was why she was protecting her in secret. He believed she didn't want him to become Konoha's fiancé to agitate her uncle's feelings, and figured that was why she opposed their marriage. Real Konoha knew that wasn't it, and that his naive interpretation was so far off, but maybe that meant she successfully changed the dark history. She felt relief, knowing she no longer had to die. Sol then came by to thank her as well, coldly saying he wouldn't have been able to resist killing anyone who harmed Konoha. This event was bad in a new way. In the story, this incident caused Konoha's magic to awaken, and that allowed her to escape the disaster that had befall her later. But since Iana saved her, that hasn't happened. So, if something happened to Konoha and Sol suspected her, he'd definitely kill her. She had to protect Konoha from now on. 1 month after becoming Iana, she was still having a rough time adjusting. She gushed over the beautiful view of Barbara Forest, but suddenly felt like she'd forgotten something really important. Arriving at the location, Konoha brightly greeted her. They were going to see the flowers today. Gino gently grabbed Iana, trying to lead her to where they were going, and she'd stumble on a rock so he romantically held her? This was her ideal high-spec man. Sol entered scene, telling her not to cause trouble for Jennifer, and that he'd show her the way from here, offering his own hand. His icy gaze was so cold. If Jennifer was the Flame Knight, then Sol was an Ice Butler. Sol was a lonely assassin and beautiful as a doll. For Konoha's sake, he's taken on the appearance of a butler to keep an eye on her. As he told Iana there was no need for thanks because this was simply his duty, she thought of him as her ideal form, the man she poured all her aesthetic sense into. He's super scary to her, but she somehow found that appealing. Dang, I think a lot of my viewers would like him. That aside, she made up her mind. She'd protect Konoha so that nothing bad happens to her, and she'll survive too. Back in middle school, the real Konoha absolutely believed she would be summoned to another world. One day, her mother asked if she had a crush on anyone, and she did. Living somewhere far away was her fiancé, Jennifer. Her mother shuddered, thinking it might be an international marriage. But no, it was obviously a marriage in another world. Never getting summoned, she forgot her dark history, and through reincarnation, she of course became Iana. Too excited about her outing with Konoha, Iana accidentally knocked over her sister, and numerous guards showed up from the bushes to protect her. The love of the people of this world had for her was so strong. Iana was terrified of what would happen if they ever became suspicious. Worse, she feared what Sol would do if he suspected her. Konoha would decide to conclude their outing with a tea party as a way to thank Iana for rescuing them the other day. Iana was charmed by the sparkle and glitter of the angelic heroine and main hero. Sol then served them the tea, which was made with the highest quality leaves grown in their lands. It smelled so nice. In her previous life, the real Konoha wasn't even making her own tea, being too exhausted after work. She had to buy pre-made ones. And now, it felt like her anxiety was melting away. When a bunny appeared from the bushes, the sisters were gushing at how cute it was. Konoha was truly happy getting to spend time with her sister like this. And Iana was stunned by how adorable her sister was. Konoha then walked over to some blooming violets, and Sol quickly warned her to get away from there. Suddenly, a monster leaped out and carried her away. Trying to remember which part of the plot this was, Iana then recalled it was chapter 2. In the main story, the incident with her uncle awakened Konoha's magical powers. But Jennifer remained unconscious. To heal him, she headed to Barbara Forest in search of herbs needed for his medicine. After obtaining the herbs, Konoha and her companions ran into a monster on their way back home. In middle school, the real Konoha began learning about various things, and she battled a variety of fantasies while writing chapter 2. She found it hard telling others these things, and if they were to be given a color, they'd be a blushing pink. When a beautiful female lead was left flustered and blushing, hearing words like brute, beast, and sadist, this was a period in which her mental censor was easily triggered. She became curious, and although she didn't want to admit it, her conflicting feelings gave rise to this highly erotic monster. Seriously, what kind of story was this girl even trying to write? When Sol appeared behind her and asked what was wrong, Iana was jittering as she mentioned she was trying to remember some things about the monster. Jennifer then asked for help. This part of her dark history was extremely embarrassing, but if Konoha gets hurt, Sol would kill her. Not wanting to die, Iana agreed to tell what she knew about the monster. They were around a campfire as Iana explained that the monster would observe its target first after capturing it. Since it was less active at night, this was the best time to save Konoha, because once morning came, she would be ravished in all the perverted ways book talk rates interspecies fantasy novels. But Iana couldn't say that. Instead, she told them Konoha would be devoured. Confronting Iana, Sol remembered saying it was her first time in Barbara Forest, and he questioned where the daughter of a count could possibly obtain information about monsters. Panicking, she told him she had done some research before coming to the forest, and if people around her sister were knowledgeable, it would protect her. But Sol asked why she didn't inform Konoha when they arrived. At this point, Iana realized her crisis management ability wasn't the best. Sol was obviously suspicious of her. Jennifer then came to the rescue, asking her to guide them to the monster's lair, and she thought once Konoha was safe, it would help convince Sol of her innocence. When they got close, Jennifer asked her to wait behind with Sol because he didn't want to put her in danger. He promised to save Konoha, even if it cost him his life. Iana didn't mind waiting, if it would clear her of suspicion. The soldiers would rush past her to attack the monsters that suddenly appeared. That's when she remembered that the carnal beast wasn't the only monster in the Barbara Forest. Hearing Konoha scream, Iana rushed off to save her sister. Because she prevented the incident with her uncle, Konoha of course didn't have the magic to protect herself. Before the monster could devour Konoha, Iana plucked a plant and threw it at the beast. Running to her sister, Iana thought about how she didn't want to die and wanted to stop playing the unfortunate role of villainess. She just wanted to live a peaceful life. Iana would use her body to shield her sister. Wait, what was she doing? She worked so hard to avoid dying, only to choose the death route herself. Before the beast's claws could shred her, that's when Jennifer and Sol would attack the beast. It slapped Iana with its tail as it turned to get away. Jennifer ordered his men not to chase it too far. He covered Konoha with his coat, apologizing for letting such terror befall her. But Konoha believed he would come to save her. Just thinking about him made her fears disappear. While Iana was excited that Konoha and Jennifer were alright, Sol would carry her in his arms. She became flustered, saying she was fine and just needed a little rest. As the sun rose, Sol told her of the man-eating flowers that were active in the morning, and that if she wanted to be attacked, she just needed to let him know. He was basically encouraging her to give herself up. As the tea party came to an end, Iana was convinced that even if the story changed for Konoha, the events she wrote in The Dark History were absolute. But since she was still here, even though she was meant to have died, she had no idea what would happen in the future. At Count Magnolia's residence, Jennifer rescinded the order to assassinate Iana. He felt he had misjudged her and asked Sol if he thought differently. But Sol couldn't give a clear answer, replying only that if Jennifer gave him an order, he would follow it. 2 months later, Iana received a letter from her mother. Sol suspected it was permission to return to the capital, since her 3 months of confinement were nearly over. However, it was actually an invitation to a ball, which marked the start of Chapter 3. Iana and Konoha appeared ever so beautifully at the venue, and she was gushing at how adorable her sister looked. Suddenly, she asked Konoha not to dance with anyone, but Konoha had been looking forward to it, and Iana couldn't give a clear reason as to why she shouldn't. All she knew was that something bad would happen if Konoha danced. 8th grader syndrome flashback incoming. In middle school, the real Konoha wasn't invited to the summer festival by anyone, causing her to spend the whole summer in her room. She didn't need any fun memories in this life, and fantasized about her overwhelming beauty at the ball that would cause the king to declare her a saint. Then, she would set out with companions to defeat the Demon King. It was her destiny! So, if Konoha danced with men at this ball, she would go on a journey. But if she went on this journey without her magical powers, she wouldn't be able to protect herself. And of course, if Konoha gets hurt, Sol would kill her. She had to stop Konoha from dancing with the princes no matter what. She spotted someone talking to Jennifer and Konoha and felt she had seen him before. Iana freaked out, realizing it was the citizen from the notebooks in her past life, a handsome, fresh-faced knight captain. As he asked Konoha to dance, Iana immediately stepped in and whisked him off to the dance floor in a comical spinning fashion. She then spotted the second person trying to dance with Konoha. He was the third prince of a neighboring country, the Lily Kingdom. and a playboy. Without a moment's delay, she scooped him away too. The last character she had created for this story was the Prince of this land. In this world, the heroine was special. There were so many roles only Konoha could fulfill. Seeing the Rose Kingdom's tiny prince ask Konoha to dance, Yana would spill wine all over the floor, making a scene. With this, she had blocked all three of them, evading the death flag this time. Running off to get something to eat, she didn't expect Sol to ask her to dance. He looked so handsome to her, but she was confused, fearing he had seen her getting in everyone's way. As they graced the dance floor, she wondered why she was dancing with the man who was trying to kill her. She accidentally stepped on his foot. Then he began to guide her slowly. Their dance sparkled, and she got a warm feeling, like she was in a field of roses. She could hardly relax. Sol then asked who she really was. Given how she had done everything to get in Konoha's way earlier, he wanted to know if she was trying to make her sister miserable, or if her actions were for the sake of Konoha's smile. He couldn't understand who she was. But Yana just stared into his eyes, speechless. As the ball came to an end, she realized her change in attitude led to Sol's confusion. Jennifer came to her, asking if something was wrong, but she ran off, saying she was going to rest. Arriving in the guest room, she flopped onto the couch. Unbeknownst to her, the building was now on fire, and a sudden explosion occurred. Outside, Jennifer and Sol split up to search for Konoha, but she called out to them and mentioned her sprained ankle, apologizing for not talking about it earlier. Konoha assumed Iana had noticed it, which was why she didn't want her dancing. Meanwhile, Iana was trapped in the burning building. She had no idea about this scene and wondered if the story triggered a death flag for her because Sol hadn't killed her. With no other option, she charged through the flames, hoping Konoha and the others managed to escape safely. She believed everything was alright. After all, she had survived everything so far. The story she wrote was a tale where the main character overcomes difficulties and finds happiness. Now that she'd reincarnated and could spend time with Konoha, she wanted to make her sister even happier. Seeing Konoha smile in those moments made the real Konoha happy that she'd become Iana. Sadly, the ceiling crumbled and her leg got stuck in the rubble. Was this the end for her? She rewrote Chapter 3 to prevent Konoha from going on a journey to save the world. So, she believed everything was alright, and her role was done. That's when Sol came running to save her. In this moment, he told her he would be upset if she died without him knowing who she truly was. Carrying her, he broke through the window and landed in a pool. Konoha then ran to her sister, giving her a warm hug. She didn't want to know what would have happened if Sol hadn't come to her rescue. Iana would then thank Sol for saving her. He still didn't understand her, but would continue to stay by her side to see who she truly was. It wasn't about to get any less dangerous for her. But she couldn't tell if her heart was racing because of danger or because of Sol. However, she'd see for herself what lay beyond the dark history. Iana was being treated to cake. Jennifer would then ask Sol to serve her some of the new herbal tea. She was having the best piece, and these cakes were delicious. Konoha told her she had a bit of cream by the side of her mouth, making Iana feel a bit embarrassed. She helped her sister wipe it, and her warm demeanor filled Iana's heart with so much love. That was the ideal heroine for ya. Konoha was so kind and adorable. Iana just loved her to bits. Jennifer couldn't help but remark on how both sisters got along so well. Iana saw him as so cool and just way too handsome. As the main hero, he was the embodiment of all of Iana's preferences. There was one more person. While wiping a knife, Sol told Iana there was some apple pie and asked if she wanted some. But she'd scream in fear, asking if the knife was for cutting the pie. Sol was the assassin who killed Iana in Chapter 1 of the Dark History. Even if she rewrote the story now, he'd maintain his butler persona to keep an eye on her. And if Konoha came to the slightest harm, he would find her suspicious and kill her. Because of this, Iana had no other choice but to keep her sister safe. Sol would then tell her she had a visitor. A charming, handsome man walked in, happy to see her and noting that it had been a while. Konoha referred to him as Yomi and asked if he had finished his studies abroad in the Lily Kingdom. On the other hand, Iana had no idea who this was. According to Konoha, their fathers were good friends, so they'd been friends since childhood. Jennifer shook Yomi, recalling they had met at a party before. Iana figured Yomi must have come to see Konoha, but he decided to say hi to her. Yomi would then approach her, letting her know he was back, and she welcomed him. Hearing the girl he loved welcome him back really made him the happiest. Iana was flush, especially since everyone had hated her since her reincarnation, so it made her a little happy to hear the words, "the girl I love." Then it clicked in her head that there was someone in the story who was in love with the villainess. A character who loved someone other than the heroine wasn't her usual style. She'd remember it. In her mind, the heroine reigned supreme, so all the handsome men eventually flocked to her. But at some point, she noticed a change in herself. Her friends gave her a manga where the heroine, a commoner, was suddenly summoned to the castle as a princess, and 12 suitors all competed to be her prince. All the princes were so hot, but some were still awful. The demon prince was there to kill the princess, and all he did was get in the way. From elementary school through her early teens, the ones she poured her love into were the princes who loved the heroine wholeheartedly, or heroes who forged ahead with justice, and seemed to be made of kindness. From that, it was clear Iana had leaned towards high-spec righteousness. But from her mid-teens onwards, characters that awakened to evil began to appear instead. She felt being killed by a handsome man would be nice. And so, having awakened to the lure of evil, she added another villain to the middle of the dark history. Yomi Black Sarna. The memory slowly came back to Iana, but she wondered if Yomi was connected to any of her execution flags. He would then ask her how the matter went, seeing she was confused. Yomi whispered Konoha's name in her ear somewhat seductively. Panicking, she decided it was time to show him to his room, and she offered to handle it. Iana could now remember everything now. Yomi's role in the story was to kill Konoha. In the middle of the actual story, as Konoha journeyed to slay the Demon King, Yomi would be the man who targeted her. He resented Konoha for bringing about the execution of his beloved Iana, and saw her as his enemy. This meant Konoha was in danger, so would suspect Iana of being the culprit, and her execution would be sealed. She needed to stop Yomi. Iana was convinced that her past self was such an idiot. She decided to stay close to Yomi for a while, making the excuse that he'd forgotten how things worked here since he was abroad. Sol tried to tell her to leave the matter to him, but she insisted that Yomi wouldn't do as well with any other person than her. But more like she wouldn't do well in terms of preserving her life. Yomi also preferred to be with her, considering they'd known each other since childhood, and there were so many things only the two of them could talk about. Sol coldly questioned if they had something to talk about in particular, but Iana denied it. Dragging off Yomi, she said they were simply going to talk about his studies. She needed to keep Yomi away from everyone before he would say something he shouldn't. Iana let him know that she had put her hatred for Konoha behind her, but asked him not to mention it to the others. Right now, she absolutely loved her sister. Meeting such an angel gave meaning to her reincarnation. Yomi thought she had to be joking, especially since he sent her the dark history to kill Konoha. The Iana he knew made such a cute face when she thought about killing her sister, and he had to gush over it. She was like a queen from the land of the dead, ascending into the heavens. He rambled on about how she was like an elegant, poisonous blossom, but she told him to wrap it up. However, he was only just scratching the surface. Still, Yomi admired the way she stood on her own and worked on her goals. Even if she was reviled by all, his love for her was eternal. When Iana was with him, he wanted her to be her normal self. She tried to tell him this was the real her, and Yomi freaked out and assumed she had forgotten who she was because he went to study abroad. He believed Konoha had brainwashed her, and at this point, his imagination might even surpass her own. A week passed, and he still didn't get it. Yomi just wouldn't believe her at all. His character sheet said he was obsessed with Iana and had an unhealthy fixation on her, but it was much more difficult for her to deal with it in person. Konoha met her, asking if something was wrong. Her presence alone was so healing. Konoha had been watering some flowers, and Iana recalled how much her sister loved them, unlike herself. She told Iana to let her know if something was wrong, because as her big sister, she'd do anything to make her smile. They would decide to have tea together. Iana thought Konoha was really her ideal. She had so much to learn from Konoha's beautiful heart. Unknown to them, Yomi was watching from a distance, and he now believed Iana was being used. Later on, Iana went around looking for Yomi, but there was no sign of him. Sol would see her searching and ask if she was truly that concerned about him. He didn't believe Yomi would get lost in the manor if he were a childhood friend. She explained it wasn't a matter of getting lost, but she didn't know what kind of trouble Yomi would cause if left alone. Even though she knew everything about Yomi, she hated remembering things about her book. but she'd hate dying even more. Sol felt he understood a bit about how she felt. Caressing her hair, he worried, questioning if she was worried about being worthy to stand beside the pure, innocent Konoha. As the church bells rang, he took his leave. Yana freaked out because she thought that was going to be a death flag. Yomi finally showed up, asking if Sol had done anything to her. But more importantly, she asked him not to do anything reckless. He assured he would handle things discreetly, revealing the daggers in his coat. Seeing the blades scared her, and she chased after him, trying to explain that he had it all wrong. Yomi acted normally during dinner, but Yana had a bad feeling something was going to happen. So she desperately tried to remember the second half of the story. While on her journey, Konoha was woken by a cold night wind. The first thing she saw was a sky full of stars. Yomi had brought her to the roof of the inn while she was sleeping. His face showed no expression. Instead, it held his intent to kill Konoha and his love for Iana. Just when Konoha had accepted her fate, her companions arrived. With her courage renewed, she unleashed a very powerful magic, defeating Yomi. No matter how strong Yomi might be, if Iana knew what he was up to, she could deal with him. She wasn't about to let him outmaneuver her. Walking through the halls, Sol would catch a glimpse of Iana entering Konoha's room. He knocked on the door, but soon saw Konoha and Jinafert approaching him. He then stormed into the room, but there was no sign of Iana. Yomi had taken her to the rooftop, mistaking her for Konoha. He was about to impale her with his blade, but Iana would block his attack. She tried explaining to him again that she didn't hate her sister, but he believed Konoha was tyrannizing her, citing that she was forced to make tea for her big sister earlier. She then told him she made the tea willingly, and that the real problem was Sol. Konoha was really kind to her, and for a second, it seemed like Yomi finally understood what she was saying. But then he claimed Konoha was feigning kindness by giving her a problematic butler. His interpretation was all wrong. While they were arguing, Sol came to the rooftop, trying to figure out what they were talking about. He'd heard Iana saying, "I absolutely need Sol," because despite the inconvenience he posed, he was still one of her precious characters. Suddenly, Iana slipped off the roof, and as she fell, that's when Sol swooped in to save her. He advised her not to visit such dangerous places, and apologized for taking so long to fetch her. Iana was so flush. She thought he was so hot. After Yomi helped pull them up, she later told Sol that she was stargazing with Yomi. She asked if he overheard their conversation, but he lied, saying that he didn't. Iana was relieved, and also happy that nothing happened to Konoha. Yomi questioned why she'd bow her head to a servant. He moved to reprimand Sol, but she stopped him, explaining that if he attracted Sol's attention, she'd be killed. This only made Yomi more certain she'd been suffering, and now he was determined to kill Sol. Poor Iana, straight from the frying pan into the fire. The real Konoha first started wondering about death in middle school. Her teacher returned her novel, which she mistakenly submitted as an assignment. Konoha freaked out, but the teacher thought it was lovely that she made herself the heroine. After that, she thought Konoha wanted to be a novelist. Imaginings given form become hazardous, and without proper management, they would call down death. Iana woke up from that dreadful dream, screaming. Sol rushed into her room to make sure she was alright, but she just wished her memories would be gone. She apologized for the noise, telling him she remembered some painful things. He asked if she was injured. However, the pain was in her heart. Yomi, who had also heard her scream, dived onto Iana out of nowhere. Sol advised him that touching a woman in her nightdress was inappropriate, but Yomi was more worried about any other man aside from himself being in Iana's room. At some point, Sol was added to his list of targets. Sol would then leave to continue his rounds, and Yomi assured Iana he would finish Sol off. But this would definitely lead to another death flag for her. If she didn't stop him completely, it was all over. If Yomi killed Sol, 1. There would be a search for the one who killed him and made Konoha sad. 2. They'd find out Yomi did it for Iana's sake. And 3. They'd suspect Iana of masterminding it and execute her. If Yomi failed to kill Sol, then 1. Yomi's attempt to kill Sol would be exposed, and 2. They'd suspect Iana masterminded it and execute her. It was lose-lose either way if she didn't find a way to stop him. While Sol served tea and cake to Konoha, Iana would spy on them, noticing that Yomi was nowhere nearby. She thought she had remembered everything in the dark history, but she wasn't really confident about the stuff outside the main story. Suddenly, Yomi cast a spell, creating a wind that blew Konoha's tissue away. As Sol ran to retrieve it, Yomi cast another spell, causing a strong wind to blow Sol into the sky. Despite that, he landed gracefully before Iana, asking if something was the matter, but she was more worried about him. She tried to make sure he was alright, which made Sol ask if she was concerned about him. Iana became scared, thinking that he was already suspicious of her. He assured her that he was not experiencing any difficulties. His attention quickly turned to Konoha, who told him that she was going to fetch someone. He had sensed a suspicious presence earlier, but was too slow to respond. Sol suspected it was magic that blew him away, but it was plausible that it was also a sudden gust of wind, since there was supposedly no one in the manor who could use magic. But Iana freaked out, knowing there was someone. If things followed the plot of the book, Konoha's magic powers would have awakened by now. So, a lot of characters opposing her had magic too. Iana then recalled that Yomi went abroad to study poisons and magic, so she figured the gale was most likely his. But she wished he wouldn't shoot it at the butler who could elegantly evade surprise attacks. The next day, Iana decided to spend it in the garden with Yomi. They would come across Jennifer and Konoha, who were spending time together. Jennifer told her to get some rest, since she was up late reading. As they stared at each other lovingly, he promised he'd remain right here with her. Noticing Iana and Yomi, Jennifer asked if they were taking in the sunshine as well. He wasn't the least bit embarrassed about what they saw. Iana was shocked, seeing Sol was here as well, but he seemed to remain in stealth mode. Yomi would invite Jennifer to have tea with them until Konoha wakes up. He had heard they put a lot of effort into growing tea in Jennifer's lands. He mentioned bringing back some quality tea from the Lily Kingdom, and was hoping they could sample it together. Jennifer hadn't heard of a blend with tea leaves from Lily, so he looked forward to trying it. Since it was a bit tricky to make, Yomi decided to handle it. He also invited Sol, and although he refused, Jennifer insisted the butler join them. This was really bad. After all, Yomi knew a lot about poisons. Iana was sure that the tea he had just made was definitely poisoned. She pretended to trip, spilling the tea in the process. When she apologized to Yomi, he figured she just didn't like the idea of using poison. She wished he could at least betray her expectations a little. Sol would come over to clean up the mess, but he noticed a strange scent. Iana quickly tried to get him to look away from the poisoned tea. Considering he was an assassin, if he got a good look, he would easily catch on. They got distracted by Konoha sneezing, and using that chance, Iana told Sol to go get a blanket for her sister, while she would go get cleaning tools with Yomi. As she rushed off, Yomi held her with sweet charm, suggesting they take their time so she wouldn't fall. His hands were very gentle as they touched her. As a member of a Count's family, Yomi has had a thorough education. He might be a villain, but he wasn't rough or stupid. He lacked confidence during his childhood, and his siblings made fun of him. And though those around her spoke ill of her, the villainous Iana stood tall. Aside from his connection to Iana, Yomi was such a great guy. He had great social status, great looks, and a great personality. Iana wondered why he fell in love with someone like her. Then, realizing it was because she wrote it that way, it was criminal. The heroine was being targeted by her handsome childhood friend. Then, she suffered because she had to defeat said friend. And then, her heart was healed by the handsome men surrounding her. In order to fulfill those plot points to her satisfaction, Yomi's only fate was to die. Thinking about it now, Iana thought of her previous self as utter scum for thinking up such a horrific plot. Though at the time, she was unhappy about a lot of things. Back then, she desperately wanted to be treated like a heroine. Now, Iana felt like she didn't have the right to be exasperated with Yomi. As she tried to talk him out of his evil plans, he would embrace her warmly and assume she was trembling because she was afraid of Sol. He let her know that the magic he set up would be activated now. While her brain was still trying to process what she had heard, an explosion went off in the distance. Iana then rushed off to the scene. Yomi's magic was likely not very strong. At best, it was average. It wouldn't pose a threat to Konoha if her magic was awakened, but right now, she was vulnerable. Iana believed Jennifer and Sol would protect her sister, but if they were caught unaware, it would be terrible. In the garden, a plant monster appeared, throwing Konoha to the side. Before it could finish her off, Iana swung on the monster's tentacles, but ended up hurting her leg. Still, she fought it off, thinking it was unfair to let Yomi die when he simply existed because of her. She believed this was all her fault and that she deserved whatever happened. Iana vowed to protect him, and along with her death flags, she would break Yomi's death flags too. With all her might, she kicked the monster in the eye. That's when Jennifer and Sol joined in to defeat it. Seeing how fast they were, Iana realized Yomi wouldn't stand a chance against them. They'd definitely kill him. Yomi would come to check on her and apologized, On the other hand, Sol explained to the others that he'd been sensing someone nearby with ill intent. He also believed the man-eating flower might have been targeting him. The spilled tea back in the garden reminded him of a poison he once smelled when he was younger. At that time, he couldn't move. Recalling how Iana tried to keep him away, Sol pointed out that her behavior has been unusual lately, and he asked if she knew anything about these incidents. Seeing his piercing gaze, she panicked as it was obvious he suspected her. But Yomi threw his gloves to the ground, confessing to his crimes. He wouldn't tolerate an ounce of suspicion against Iana. He asked Sol to pick up the glove and officially challenged him to a duel. Iana hoped Sol wouldn't accept the duel. He was a cool-headed assassin and could settle it through assassination attempts. She didn't remember writing him to be a hot-headed man. However, Sol picked up the glove, accepting the challenge. Iana kind of understood why he accepted. Since the man-eating flower put Konoha in danger, he must really be angry, even though it didn't show on his face. Whatever the case, this was a story she wrote, so it was impossible for a villain to win against a heroic character. Before she could stop it, Konoha begged them not to do this. She believed it had to be a misunderstanding, urging that they talk it through and not hurt each other. She stood between them. Then, Iana realized that the heroine's power was impossible to refute. Konoha's voice was the voice of authority. Iana cheered her sister on with all her might. However, Yomi didn't see any point in talking things out now, and if Konoha were to interfere, he threatened to throw his second glove at her face. Sol was now enraged, slashing to get Konoha out of Yomi's grasp, and pointed his sword at Yomi's face. There were several dueling scenes that had nothing to do with the main plot. The trigger for them was always the heroine, so apologized to Konoha, explaining that to refuse a duel after accepting was to turn one's back on the god of battle. Konoha tried to reason with him, and Iana was cheerleading, but Jennifer would agree with Sol. In this world, the act of picking up a glove that has been thrown down was the same as declaring to the gods that you would risk your life in a duel. Iana was embarrassed, hearing how her world building was read out loud. Given the incident with the man-eating flower, Jennifer would have normally interrogated Yomi first, but with the duel being agreed upon, he would not press him now. He didn't believe Sol would lose, but in the unlikely case he did, Jennifer's eyes told Yomi all he needed to know. Soon after, Yomi and Sol got ready to battle it out. In accordance with the rites, Jennifer stated that they would only use their dominant hand. He asked Yomi to pick a hand in case he was ambidextrous, and Yomi picked his right. With that settled, only Yomi's right hand and Sol's left hand may wield a sword. Victory was only achieved when either duelist conceded or one of them lost their life. This was all again thanks to Iana's past self. Jennifer then signaled the start of the duel. In a flash, the two duelists went at it with all their might. Iana thought Sol was going to kill Yomi. She tried to intervene, but Jennifer stopped her, letting her know that until they knew the true motives behind these plots, she was not to make a move. In middle school, when things just wouldn't go right for her, it made the real Konoha want magic. At times, she believed that she really did have magic, so she used to bug those calling themselves gods with all kinds of strange requests. While her friends wished for good results in love, she would wish for fire, water, wind, earth, and healing magic. She tried putting an unnatural amount of strength into her hands to shoot a fireball, but her hands only got strangely warm. The real Konoha also tried amulets and phone straps that gave off the right vibe, but they had no effect. Iana knew she couldn't use magic, but Yomi was about to get sliced up in front of her. Her own powerlessness was making those same feelings well up inside of her. She wished she had some special power. It was shocking that the duel wasn't over yet. Iana felt bad about this, but in terms of skill, Sol was overwhelmingly better. She wondered if he was holding back, but that was impossible as long as Konoha was involved. Jennifer then commented that Sol was having a hard fight. Sol's movements were awkward, and it was all because of that time he hung from the roof when trying to save Iana. She panicked, wondering if there was a chance Sol would lose. It was good that Yomi wouldn't be killed, but that just meant Sol would die. And even if he died, she knew her death flags wouldn't disappear. Ignoring Jennifer's order to stay back, Iana slapped his hand away and dashed in to stop the battle. No matter who died, she'd still end up as a suspect. Because of that, she jumped in to stop Yomi from killing Sol, but she didn't know what to do next. Yomi asked her to leave, but she gestured to him, trying to get him to call off the duel. But Yomi misunderstood and assumed she was being manipulated. Sol also asked her to step out of the way. Iana let him know it was dangerous, but he wouldn't forgive Yomi for putting Konoha in danger. She was left frustrated, trying to think of a way to act like her cute elder sister. If she were Konoha, the fight would have probably stopped already. With no other choice, Iana pointed out Sol's injured arm, remarking that it was pathetic and a true affront to God to fight in that state. So she took his sword, deciding to face Yomi herself. Yomi was confused by Iana's challenge, considering he was doing all this for her, but she insisted she wouldn't budge from her spot, even if he were to cut her down. Really though, the sword was just too heavy that she couldn't move. There was no certainty Yomi wouldn't attack her, so it was all or nothing. Iana urged him to come at her, while hoping on the inside that he actually wouldn't do it. But Yomi would throw down his sword, unable to attack her, and she felt guilty for trampling all over his efforts. Since there was no point in the duel anymore, Jennifer asked Yomi to explain the events to them. Sol didn't mind his own injuries, but was more concerned about Konoha. Even though she didn't mind, he asked her to value herself more because she was too kind to others. Suddenly, Iana grabbed Yomi by the head and slammed it to the ground while she bowed, apologizing for all that had happened. She explained that this was all a misunderstanding, that Yomi was doing this for her after hearing rumors of Konoha tyrannizing her. She doubted this explanation would work, but all she could do was apologize. With a frightening stare, Jennifer asked if she was done. However, she continued apologizing while slamming Yomi's head. Surprisingly, Jennifer would kneel, apologizing to her for misreading her true nature. He assumed Yomi must have heard of the way he ostracized her, and for this, he took some of the blame. With this, Sol also decided not to speak on the matter any further. He was the person who could become a demon for Konoha's sake, and he asked Iana to refrain from any misleading behavior henceforth. His icy gaze froze her on the spot. Jennifer then carried Konoha to go have her wounds treated. He offered to carry Iana to get treated after, which made her heart race. But she decided to go with Yomi instead. Although Yomi wasn't convinced yet, she was happy to have made it out of the situation. Her body suddenly felt heavy, and she slowly slipped out of consciousness. Her mind would recall those days when she usually overworked herself before reincarnated into her story. When she came to, Yomi's charming face was right in front of her. Flustered, she tried to get up, but he told her to remain in bed, and noticed she still had a fever. The doctor had said that strain and fever were likely the cause of her passing out, and she slept through the entire night. Seeing that it was morning, Iana felt the urge to rush to the office. She was stressing over meetings, unemployment, and BL games, which she might not be able to afford if she didn't work. Due to her terrible state, Yomi couldn't accept the fact that she had willingly apologized to Konoha. That's when Konoha rushed into the room, embracing her sister warmly and trying to make sure she was alright. Iana was purified by her pure energy, recalling that this wasn't Japan. Iana assumed she was probably acting like a corporate slave because she still had memories of her past life. Yomi asked Konoha to control herself, questioning why she was interrogating Iana, who hadn't fully recovered. He tossed her out of the room, refusing to let any more visitors inside. Iana feared Yomi would cause more trouble since he hadn't been fully convinced yet. He now assumed Konoha was secretly forcing Iana to work and give her money to buy a BL game thing. But he was totally wrong. Yomi's assumptions were only making things worse, and she definitely didn't want any help he was offering. Iana couldn't believe she spoke of something so exalted even while being half asleep. In her past life, she had a taste for both Ultimate BL and GL, so they served as fuel for her imagination. However, it seems she never grew out of her obsession. Yomi decided to go confront Konoha, threatening to kill her if she was exploiting Iana. But she stopped him immediately. She knew he would never fall in love with Konoha and wouldn't stop trying to kill her. This is why she needed to convince him here and now, but she had no idea what to do. No matter how many times she told him he was wrong, Yomi didn't believe her, and he never listened. Giving him a scary glare, Yomi was flush. Then, she recalled the one time he actually backed down, which made her certain that he couldn't defy an assertive Iana. If Iana wanted Yomi to obey, the only way was to unleash her villainous persona. Talking down to him, she told him that she was enjoying a little game of playing the role of an agreeable little sister in order to gain everyone's trust. And when they'd trust her, she would send them to hell. She mocked Yomi for not getting the hint, making it clear that there was nothing he could do for her. Iana would ask him to be a good little boy and feign obedience like she was. Unable to resist her, he responded like a good dog. A few minutes later, Yomi expressed how glad he was to hear what Iana was thinking, and promised to never run off and do things on his own anymore. He then decided to go apologize to Konoha for kicking her out, and make some chit-chat about random topics, completely taking the whole thing overboard. Iana thought things would be fine now, but she was still slightly worried. Feeling exhausted, she decided to take a nap. Waking up this time, she was met by Jennifer's shining aura. Her brain totally shut down. He was definitely the spinning image of a hero. She assured him that she was feeling much better than the previous night, and asked if he wouldn't rather be with Konoha, but he answered that he wanted to be alone with her instead. Around this time last year, he had some business with Iana, so he was going to her room, but the wind was strong that day. He had to turn down an offer to be considered for marriage, and wanted to apologize to her. However, Iana completely ignored him, turning him away at the door, and he was thrown out over and over. With no other recourse, he stood below the window, calling out to her, but to the very last, she refused to come out. So he reluctantly gave up and left. And as soon as he did, Iana appeared at a party and began bullying Konoha. Jinifred believed she did all this to shield them from her uncle. Although he had apologized before, he still wanted to tell her something privately. He embraced her with his forehead touching hers and thanked her. Iana was left speechless. Then she remembered this was a piece of lore from her book. In this world, a sick person's temperature was taken by touching foreheads together. In the Rose Kingdom, it was called foreheading. Back then, she loved the name she came up with and wanted to see lovey-dovey nursing events. So she used to make the heroine in the games she played catch a cold on purpose. But Iana could barely handle the real thing now. She was flushed with too much blood rushing to her face. Jinifred worried about her and decided to stay with her, offering to read her a book till she calmed down. But this only made her feel more embarrassed. In her past life, she got teased for not having a boyfriend. She'd argued that she had a fiancé in another world. She put a lot of her fantasies into Jinifred. Even her mother could feel the ominous aura emanating from her room. When the real Konoha stepped out to get some pudding, her mother would reach for her book, shocked to see Jinifred again. Real Konoha always fantasized different scenarios with him. Jinifred was always her ideal. She absorbed all the knowledge she could and slowly perfected his form. The first generation was just a hot-headed guy with a bandana. The second was a kind champion of justice who always had the same pose. And eventually, his final form, the perfect Jinifred, was born. The way he read the book to her so stiffly with different voices made her laugh. Here's my demonstration so you understand. Book reading long ago. There was a very fat little piggy. "Stop it! I don't want to be eaten!" said the little piggy. He was so funny. He was exactly the person Iana thought he'd be. This reaffirmed her own preferences. After he left, Sol came in next, bringing her medicine. The way he asked if she liked the bitterness of medicine made her think this was an assassination attempt. Scared for her life, she tried running away, but he stopped, asking Iana to return to bed immediately. Sol wanted to check her temperature, but she feared this might be another death flag. So, she dodged all his attempts at foreheading. She claimed she was alright, but Sol decided he would never let her around duels again. He knew she was a risk taker, but didn't take her to be so foolhardy. He then held her hand, which was hurting. When she collapsed, it was also hot in the same spot he touched. It was obvious to him that Iana didn't usually hold swords, but if she hadn't stepped in, he would have been killed. She wanted to take responsibility for his left arm that got injured when he saved her from falling off the roof. But he didn't see any reason for that. Sol only saw himself as a servant, whose duty was to protect his master. He pressed her against the bed, telling her if she were to never wake again, he would have spent his whole life in regret. The moment ended quickly when Sol heard voices at the door. Meanwhile, Iana assumed Sol was saying that he wanted to kill her with his own two hands. As she went to get the door for her sister, Sol would pull her back, whispering his thanks into her ear and leaving her stunned. When the others entered, he let them know Iana's fever had subsided, but teased she was still a bit warm. These were all the characters she had created, so she didn't understand why she had to be on guard all the time. She should have been able to read Yomi, Jinifred, and Sol, but her heart wasn't prepared at all. They set it racing without trying, and pushed right past the sight of them that she knew. The following day, Iana realized she couldn't let the death flags get her. For that reason, forgetting the story's world building was inexcusable. However, this incident had taught her something. Seeing a nursing event through the heroine's point of view protected her heart. When she thought about Jinifred tending to Konoha, she got heart pangs, just like she should. The heroine was basically her self-insert, and she didn't want to see her real self from an objective point of view. She tried to keep a tight rein on her heart. Jinifred would enter the room, mocking the way her hair looked. Sol then informed them that Konoha was asking for them, and seeing Sol, Iana tried to remain calm. When he wanted to approach her, Yomi came running to her, but she quickly commanded him to stay. He asked if he could stay longer because for some reason, an avalanche had blocked the road, making him unable to return home. This would mean she'd have to play the villainess a lot more for him, regardless of what she actually wanted. She was definitely bound to collapse again. From you not liking the video and subscribing to my channel, because here at my Shoujo Weekly, I've got tons of villainous stories from you to choose from. Looking for more outside of this one? Check out my villainous playlist. Finished all that or are looking for something different? You can check out my completed series playlist, which has everything I've covered with at least one or more completed seasons in it. So come on, hit that subscribe and I'll be your guy. On another day, Iana and Konoha headed back into the Rose Kingdom's castle town. They couldn't sneak into the castle often, so Konoha was having a lot of fun. There was also a festival happening today. Considering Iana had a rough time being sick in bed for a while, Konoha hoped this would be a pleasant change of pace for her. Her kindness was so cute and overwhelming. Suddenly, the townsfolk would surround Konoha, begging her to come into their stalls. Since she hadn't been hiding her face, she was easily recognized and swept away. Her very existence was so beautiful, captivating everyone around her. However, this was bad for Iana, because if Konoha got hurt in any way, another death flag would be triggered. She tried to save her sister, but as the crowd saw her face, they all ran away in fear, though she thought she could use this chance to save Konoha. Unexpectedly, Soul showed up to retrieve her. No matter how hard she worked to avoid suspicion, the story was never on her side. That's because her fate was to be killed as the villainess. Back home, Konoha apologized to Jennifer and Soul, explaining that it was her idea to take Iana into town. At the same time, Yomi rushed to hug Iana, complaining that he wanted to join her. Iana was shocked when she heard Jennifer saying he would punish Konoha, warning of the dangers, having heard unsettling rumors about beautiful young women going missing in town. Complimenting her beauty, he advised Konoha to be more aware of the dangers to herself. He and Soul were always there to protect her, which made her feel like she'd been taking it for granted. Jennifer would draw her in closer, stating it was because of her they could be so strong. Then, he softly told her not to go wandering off so much. One of the butlers came in, informing them that Konoha had a visitor, but she wasn't expecting anyone. The man that entered apologized for the sudden visit, and let Konoha know that he wanted her to be on guard. He was part of the Rose Kingdom Police Security Force, Division 2, Vice Captain attached to the Hydrangea Unit, Shino Clematis. He would inform Konoha about all the beautiful ladies who had suddenly disappeared. Therefore, the chances that she would be targeted were extremely high. Iana questioned if these events were a part of the story, and if it happened again, that just meant she'd be a suspect once more. She was always in the dark about these things, and it frustrated her. Shino noticed she was looking pale and found it strange. He claimed there was no need for her to be worried about being targeted, but she could sense malicious intent behind his words. She felt a sharp pain in her head, causing Soul to get worried. He asked her to rest in her room for a while, but she told him it was fine, though she couldn't tell if he was worried or just trying to kick her out. Or maybe he was suspicious of her. Iana told Soul she would rest a little and thanked him, while also telling Yomi not to follow her. Right now, she didn't know who the policeman was, so she would step away for now and go over the story to remember everything about the case and the culprit. Then, she tossed Shino and her death flag into the trash. An hour later, she was freaking out because she couldn't remember anything. There was no way she'd forget an incident about beautiful girls being kidnapped. There was a time in middle school when the real Konoha was obsessed with stories about beautiful damsels in distress. She'd write Konoha in the story to be kidnapped by evil, frozen, or turned into a sleeping beauty, and her real self would merely be a dream to protect her soul. And before she fell asleep, she would tell herself that she'd wake up on the other side in the morning. At school, when she saw a beautiful sunset, her fantasy world was all she could think about. After her exams, her mother complained about her horrible scores, but she claimed what she learned there couldn't be taken to the other world. She was lost in her fantasies until her grades tanked. Iana was losing her mind, feeling that one of those fantasies had to exist, and she was probably forgetting something huge. So, she snuck into the opposite room to eavesdrop on Shino's conversation. She couldn't help but wonder why beautiful, noble daughters were going missing, with no motives or prior signs. Considering Jennifer had also heard rumors about this, she believed there had to be more than 5 victims. As silence filled the air, she decided to go hide below the closest window. But she would get startled as Shino came into the room and decided to question her for eavesdropping. He'd use his foot to hold her down on the chair, asking why she came back to eavesdrop, and he immediately assumed she was the one behind the kidnappings. Apparently, she was already a suspect. The family of 3 victims had already testified that she attended parties Konoha was invited to and bullied all those young ladies who were known for their beauty. He claimed that she hurt people over her vain envy and resentment, and he wasn't surprised if these incidents were really connected to her. Furious, Iana snapped, letting him know that unless she was somehow connected to all the ladies going missing, then there was no evidence of anything. However, there was another reason he suspected her. Shino claimed she had seen his face before, even though she couldn't remember. He had let his guard down when he arrested her, and never imagined she'd escape execution. That's when Iana recalled he was the officer who came to apprehend her when she got the dark history book. Shino's little sister had disappeared in this case too, and he believed Iana was behind it. He wished he had cast aside his status as an officer and executed her with his own 2 hands. Just as he was about to hit her, Yomi grabbed his hand, and he'd quickly back away. Soul also happened to be standing right behind him as well. They asked her what happened, but fearing Soul would find out why Shino suspected her, Iana lied that the police officer was just teaching her some self-defense techniques, so that she'd be able to protect Konoha if she were ever in a pinch. She signaled Shino to shush and to just go away. Before leaving, he told Iana to let Konoha know that evil will always be punished in the name of justice, and she should rest easy. The next day, Iana wondered who exactly could rest easy, considering she barely got any sleep at night. She found out that she and Shino were acquainted, but had no idea why he was treating her this way. Unless she figured what might trigger a death flag, she couldn't get out ahead of this. Then, Iana found Jennifer and Konoha going over the security measures, since Konoha could still be targeted. Seeing how seriously Jennifer was taking this, Iana felt a bit relieved. Konoha then mentioned an invitation letter had arrived for Duchess Amarilla's birthday party. The Duchess heard about Konoha, hoping she would attend. According to Soul, they'd be increasing security on that day. Iana was glad to hear that. Amaryllis was the Rose King's younger sister. Given the recent disappearances, Iana felt the timing of this was too perfect. It was like the events were conveniently being strung together. She assumed Konoha would decline the invitation, but instead, Konoha was expressing how much she wanted to go, and even asked Iana to come with her. Iana accepted, but was still worried about her death flags, and if they would be okay. The water that welled up in the Western Rose Kingdom didn't allow anything to grow. The region was once poor, but Duchess Amaryllis revitalized the land. By using the once unusable water and beauty serums, she helped the land reflourish. At the venue, Konoha's heart was racing, just thinking about how Amaryllis was at the forefront of beauty in the Rose Kingdom. She was so honored to be invited. The Duchess of Beauty, Susalina Rosa Amaryllis, would welcome everyone to the party. Seeing her, all the girls screamed in excitement. It was like being at an idol concert. Rosa then approached Konoha, holding her face softly. The Duchess admired her beauty, complimenting that she was truly like an angel. She assured Konoha that the police were lending their help, so there was no need for her to bother about those disappearances. The Duchess wanted to soothe the pain in Konoha's heart. The Hydrangea unit then asked everyone to entrust the venue to them as they took their stations. The ladies would squeal, staring at all the hot officer guys. Iana then recalled that the Hydrangea unit was the police, the organization Shino was working with. Later on, Soul commented on the way Iana was gorging on food and drink, thinking it was very unseemly. But she'd argue there was nothing else for her to do, and she was bored. He'd collect her drink. She was so bored, she regretted not bringing Yomi, but apparently he had a cold. Seeing some ladies having fun, she tried to join them, but they quickly dispersed in different directions. The more she tried, the more they ran away. They wanted nothing to do with the villainess. Now, Iana was having a harder time making friends than in her past life. Even though her real self had no friends, Iana had a lot of enemies. Shino's unit was suspicious of her, and so were the servants. In any case, she felt it was better to be alone. She would accidentally bump into a lady who had wine spilled all over her, but she'd mistake it for blood. With so many people staring and with the way the lady reeked of alcohol, Iana offered to take her to the bathroom to get cleaned up. The girl came out in a beautiful new dress that Iana gave her, all thanks to Yomi. He had apparently shoved it into her things when she wasn't looking. This girl was a different kind of pretty compared to Konoha. Iana then asked how she ended up like this, but the girl didn't feel like speaking, claiming it wasn't something to be spoken of to others. She would then reveal that she was the daughter of her father and a mistress. Very recently, her mother died in town, and her father's house took her in, but her older sister had the most awful personality. So awful, it drove her crazy. The older sister never earned her own money, but she made fun of the younger sister's mother's work, and due to the difference in their statuses, she was treated like a slave. It was in fact the same older sister who poured wine all over the girl, making her a laughingstock. The girl then introduced herself as Manoa Camellia, and since Manoa didn't grow up in nobility, she didn't know Iana's face. Soul and Jennifer then came to check on Iana, mistaking Manoa for her friend. If you opened the dark history, you could see the darkness real Konoha had in her heart for female characters. It was a fact that story Konoha was surrounded entirely by men, whether it was unconscious or they were just in the way. The women, if there were any, either had no backstory or were treated like crap. Instead, those roles were usually given to cute, girly boys. As the story progressed, she needed to bring in female characters. And due to the influence of a lady in her neighborhood, they were all basically lesbians. Yes, I am quoting the anime 100% there. Iana deeply regretted these writings. Iana was having trouble finding Manoa amongst the crowd. The earring looked very valuable, and she didn't want to hold on to it. She thought it'd be disastrous if someone took it. Just then, she'd hear Manoa arguing with her sister about the dress. Manoa tried to explain that she borrowed the dress from her friend, but her sister accused her of lying, refusing to believe she could possibly have any friends. She assumed Manoa asked their father for it, but their father wasn't any kinder to Manoa than he had to be. He did the bare minimum by taking her in after her mother passed away. On the other hand, Manoa was certain he would buy her sister as many dresses as she wanted. Manoa tried to calm her sister down, but the girl kept berating her, saying she was better off as a slave. As Manoa's sister was about to spill wine on her again, Iana rushed in, getting herself soaked instead. She completely jumped in without thinking about it. Iana let her know that Manoa was not a slave, but instead, her friend. Manoa's sister fell to her knees, begging for forgiveness. The nobles around feared this could be the end of House Camellia for incurring the wrath of the villainous Iana Magnolia. Iana, meanwhile, thought she was just giving her normal smile earlier and had no idea how she was coming off. Shino would then step in, believing Iana was the cause of this altercation. At this rate, she feared he would want to interrogate her again. However, Konoha reminded her that this all would make the Duchess sad on her birthday. While Shino was distracted by her, Iana used the chance to escape. Sol would then take her away so she could get cleaned up. After taking a freezing shower, Sol informed her that Konoha had calmed everyone down, and Manoa was alright as well. He had also informed her that only cold water was available at this time of day, but let her know the maids were bringing the hot water. As he dried her hair, Sol let her know that the smell of wine still lingered. Suddenly, Manoa came in and started fighting Sol, and then dragged Iana away. She assumed he was assaulting her, so Iana had to explain that Sol was her servant. Iana then apologized for calling Manoa her friend earlier, believing it might have caused problems. But Manoa had no idea why she'd think that. To her, it was perfect, because everyone in her way was wiped out at once. Now, all of them were afraid to interfere with Iana's friend. Manoa told Iana not to worry about being the villainess of rumor, because she planned to find out the truth herself. Like normal human relations, if she didn't like Iana, she'd distance herself. But if she liked her, she'd come closer, and she wanted to be more honest with her friend. Iana felt like she was being used, but it made her happy. She expressed how much she was looking forward to their friendship. Manoa would turn away suddenly, telling Iana she was being stifling. All the while, Sol had eavesdropped on the whole thing. Iana got a little carried away. She wanted to spend time with the first friend she made at the glittering party, so she didn't notice the dark history at her feet, creeping ever closer. Later, the main party had to delay their departure due to a fierce storm. Konoha found it quite strange, considering they could see the stars at the party last night. Sol found Iana strangely dancing with a set of armor, but she told him to pay no mind. Manoa had praised her for being a good dancer, so she was over the moon. Not being able to remember the story made her so nervous about this party. She never imagined she'd be able to make a friend. Still, Manoa was far younger than she was in her previous life. Iana thought she really needed to watch her words, or else Manoa would think she was creepy. It wasn't that she had no friends at all, but Manoa was the first friend she made since becoming Iana, so it made her really happy, even though it was obvious that Manoa was using her to deal with her bullies. Iana would freak out when Jennifer picked up the earring she'd been meaning to return to her, but she totally forgot. Now, she feared Manoa would think she stole it and hate her, so she begged Jennifer not to tell anyone she had it. Meanwhile, she planned to tell Manoa she only just found it in the hallway. Konoha then came to ask Iana to join her for tea with the Duchess. Jennifer offered to come instead, but she didn't want him to listen to their talks about makeup and such. Iana would then decline the invitation because she was off to see her friend. Iana recalled Manoa was wearing a dress that was a memento of her mother yesterday, so the earring might be precious to her as well. She'd then meet a crowd packed in the hallway. Looking ahead, she saw Manoa's older sister yelling at the Hydrangea unit officers to find her sister or she'd be forced to face the wrath of her father. Just before Iana could slip past the crowd, Shino showed up. She heard him reporting that Manoa was nowhere to be found, and that even with this weather, They couldn't rule out her leaving the house, but still, there was no doubt Manoa had gone missing. With Iana showing herself, she immediately became a suspect in the case. Manoa's sister brought up how Iana had tried to kill Konoha with a dark history, and accused her of killing Manoa in the same way. The nobles there all turned on Iana, calling her a villainess, rotten to the core. Shino would then call her in for questioning. While having tea with Amaryllis, Konoha accidentally spilled her tea. The Duchess assumed she was nervous and asked her to rest in her room for the day. As Sol escorted Konoha back, he noticed she was looking a bit pale. She explained she felt somewhat uneasy and thought she heard someone scream, almost as if knowing her sister was being interrogated. Iana was screaming that she was innocent while the maid searched her. Then, the leader of the hydrangea unit, Yamato Hydrangea, asked her why she was at the scene when her room was on a different floor, and why Manoa's earring was found on her. Iana tried explaining she had picked up the earring with the intention of returning it. Yamato then asked if she had interacted with Manoa enough to be aware of the design on her earrings, and Iana answered that the Duchess's party was still a social event, hence, mingling was a standard practice. Iana thought if she talked about Manoa here, it shouldn't make them suspect her too quickly. Both the guests and Shino also saw the altercation in the ballroom. Having met Manoa at the after party, Sol was with her as eyewitness then. Iana admitted to having picked up the earring today. If they found out she had it since last night, she couldn't blame them for thinking something happened between her and Manoa. Yamato then decided they'd return the earring themselves. However, as Iana was about to leave, Shino stopped her, letting her know that she was not being released yet. They were about to conduct a real investigation into the disappearance, and she'd be under his supervision while standing by in another room. It was to prevent her from running away since she was still under suspicion for the abducted beauties. Afterwards, Sol felt the police were being hasty with their decision. Iana explained to him that they only wanted somewhere to be quiet to hear what she had to say. She definitely couldn't tell him they were suspicious of her or he'd kill her. Sol then confirmed that Konoha wasn't feeling well when she asked. After chatting with the Duchess, a sudden chill. Iana would go see her sister, but Konoha was already asleep. Maybe it was because she was a fair-skinned beauty, but Iana thought Konoha looked like a well-made doll when she was asleep. Iana then recalled there was a part of the story where Konoha gets turned into a doll. In the story, this began when the Rose King issued her an invitation. The king called Konoha into the garden, telling her about a land in the kingdom where young women were given as offerings, and someone of royal blood had shamefully adopted the practice. He then implored her to use her saintly power and purification. Konoha sensed the painful feelings the king held towards his relative, and she accepted his request. But after the conversation, she was abducted by the character Iana had created after associating spilled wine with blood, the Bloody Rosa. But Iana thought it had nothing to do with this. She noticed the roses by the table, which Gineford explained were brought by the Duchess. Roses were considered the national flower, so he assumed Amaryllis had grown fond of Konoha. Iana then recalled that every member of royal blood carried the middle name Rosa. At that moment, she started to become suspicious of Amaryllis, and tried to remember who she was when she made up Bloody Rosa. The real Konoha watched an anime with her friends, where the princess was captured and the prince came to save her. Although the princess was saved, she imagined her becoming a doll for the Dark King, and she lived on these fantasies for a while. She nearly turned into a monster to erase those who saw her face while she fantasized. According to the timeline, it was around the time the Demon King would appear that Bloody Rosa would show up. It was only mentioned in flashback scenes, but in the beginning, Bloody Rosa only wanted to admire the girls she abducted. When she meets Konoha in the middle of the story, she grows tired of simply admiring and began killing the girls in the name of beauty, drinking their blood. If Amaryllis was Bloody Rosa, Iana still had a chance to save Manoa and the other girls before it was too late. Sol then offered to escort her to a new room after hearing the report from Shino, but she refused, stating she'd be safe since the police have their eyes on her. So, she asked him to protect Konoha. She planned to expose everything by finding Manoa and the others by herself. At Iana's bedroom window, she had tied various fabrics of cloth to slip out. However, it eventually ripped and she fell to the ground. Considering how insane the height was, she thought she was going to die. Her determination to find Manoa and the others sounded like a death flag now. But she couldn't let Shino take her away, so this was her only choice. In the story, Bloody Rosa kills the girls in the basement, which meant she just needed to find it. But the nobles' houses in her story were ridiculously huge. She tried checking every single room, opening a door, She definitely wasn't expecting to see Shino waiting for her. She ran away as he chased her down with a rope. He knew she tried to escape, especially since he'd been chasing her for years now. His rope would miss her, but she'd eventually run into a dead end. He then asked what she was trying to do, and Iana told him she wanted to expose the Duchess's evil deeds. She claimed Amaryllis was abducting beautiful young ladies, and there was a basement where she was certain they were being held. As for proof, well, she had none. Shino would mention that the Duchess was heartsick about the kidnappings, and had even cried about his little sister being abducted. He was furious at Iana for disparaging others, threatening to walk her to the gallows himself. Iana wasn't 100% sure that the Duchess was Bloody Rosa, but even if she might be mistaken, she was determined to save everyone. Minoa and the others might still be alright, but she didn't know when things would change and get them killed. Iana would pin Shino's back to the wall, promising to accept all responsibility for the crimes and climb the steps of the gallows herself if she was wrong. So, she asked for his help. This was her story, and if she could rewrite everything, then she'd risk her life to do it. Seeing that the storm wouldn't likely let up until tomorrow, he permitted her to do as she liked to prove her delusions were true. But if she was unable to prove anything before the storm ended, he'd arrest her. And they left to search the basement, where unbeknownst to them, someone was spying close by. Meanwhile, Jennifer informed Yamato that Iana was missing. He hoped she hadn't been caught up in something. With the evidence that she escaped through the window, Captain Yamato believed she did this of her own free will. After he questioned her, he suspected she was hiding something like evidence connecting her to the missing beauties. So, he believed she might have fled to hide her involvement. When he asked if Jennifer knew anything, the hero recalled Iana telling him to keep the earring a secret. And so Jennifer then told Yamato he knew nothing. Iana and Shino had been searching for almost an hour, and yet Iana still hadn't narrowed down the location. He told him he should have memorized the layout, but he yelled back at her, saying he did, and there was no basement. Shino wasn't just cooperating so he could arrest her. He also wanted to prove that the Duchess wasn't that kind of person. Iana tried thinking about what Konoha, the heroine, would do. Maybe she could use her saintly powers to find the basement that people normally couldn't. She then recalled that Konoha had gone to have tea with the Duchess privately. She asked Shino why a kidnapper would pass up an opportunity to abduct someone when they were alone together. He answered that either there was a problem with the target, or there was no opening. If they expected to be alone, but a third person cut in, they wouldn't be able to act. Recalling that Soul was with Konoha, Iana grabbed Shino's hand, thanking him. He was finally beginning to piece it together. She decided to head to where the Duchess had invited Konoha to, the conservatory on the center west second floor. They arrived at the greenhouse there, where Shino explained was meant for the Duchess's use alone. It was temporarily opened for the search for Minoa, and he said the captain and Mika should have searched the place already. Iana rustled through the flowers, trying to find a hidden switch or secret lever, but Shino doubted she'd find anything. She'd then rotate the head of a statue, causing the fountain to flow differently and shift to the side, revealing an underground passage. Suddenly, Shino was knocked out, and before Iana could see who it was, she was struck down as well. Afterwards, Konoha woke up to Jennifer and Soul. She began crying because she was scared and sensed darkness. Someone's deep darkness was enveloping the mansion, trying to take control. A darkness so deep, it made her sad. Iana and Shino were chained up as they saw themselves before Amaryllis. The Duchess had chained up 2 girls with her, using both of them and their beauty as playthings. Shino couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Duchess called him a stupid man for actually believing in her. She also let him know that his sister was here as well. While Shino had been searching 6 whole months for his sister, Amaryllis was giving her so much love in her special room. Hearing Shino's sister and Minoa screaming, Iana and Shino began struggling with the chains, trying to break free. But the Duchess would threaten to sully Shino's body here and now. Thinking of how to save him, Iana asked Amaryllis if she could really get his clothes off. She doubted the Duchess would be able to strip him. This was the problem of incomprehensible original fantasy clothing construction. The word original, for someone like Iana's past self, whose hobby was fantasizing, was a magical set of letters that got her nicely drunk on the feeling of creating something. Her friends were eager to see her original character. She told them it turned out kind of weird. Or so she'd say, but it was all false modesty. When they asked how the belt worked, she said it was by magic. Basically, if an outfit looked good visually, then how it functioned didn't matter in the least. The real Konoha wanted to grovel and apologize to her characters for making their clothes impossible to get in or out of. For characters like Shino and others who barely had any backstory, that was how she designed their police uniforms. At this point, Iana was going to die via the dark history, so she wanted the Duchess to stop. It was punching a vent straight through her heart. Suddenly, the Duchess would propose they work together. She suggested they join forces to bring all those young ladies Iana had bullied at different parties, believing Iana hated beautiful women, but was surprised to hear Iana respond she had grown out of such things. Iana claimed the Duchess was like her old self, who yearned for beauty and tried to abandon herself. The her who didn't want to acknowledge the ugliness inside her and ended up twisted. Angrily, Amaryllis slapped Iana, saying she would use her to feed her beauty. She would cut her body open and drink the blood inside. In a country to the east, to preserve their beauty, it was said they sipped the blood from living young women. Iana was frightened, thinking she'd be killed, but Shino yelled at her to keep it together and not lose consciousness. Iana recalled how Konoha would get kidnapped by Amaryllis, but the heroine's companions protected her and forced the Duchess to yield. After hearing about Amaryllis' past self and the Rose King, Konoha felt sad for the tormented Duchess. Long ago, the Duchess had lost her beautiful young sister to illness. She loved and cherished her sister more than the disease hated her. One cold day, her sister, on the verge of death, whispered, "Big sister, please always stay as beautiful as you are right now." In that moment, the Duchess's heart began to warp. She decided that beauty itself would be her memorial to her sister. Konoha then looked at the Duchess in the eye, telling her that this would make her sister happy. So, Iana said those same words, telling her that her compassionate heart was the beauty her sister was talking about. The Duchess was shocked, wondering how she knew what her sister said. Iana hoped Amaryllis would turn pure and regain her kindness, just like in the story. However, Amaryllis drew her weapon, claiming such words shouldn't be spoken by someone as ugly as Iana. Shino tried to stop her, but she reminded him that Iana was the one under suspicion of the abducted beauties. If he died here, then Iana would get blamed for everything. Amaryllis then ripped Iana's clothes, telling her to offer her blood. As she rushed to attack her, Shino would step in to protect Iana. The result was his hands getting bloodied. Since he forced them out of the shackles, he couldn't use them anymore. He offered to draw the Duchess away, so Iana could contact Captain Yamato. Since his sister and other victims were still here, Shino would rather sacrifice himself than let Amaryllis reach them. Iana agreed with the plan, reasoning that getting help would be far more useful. As Amaryllis drew closer, Iana started running away, but she tripped on the stairs. Shino tried to distract the Duchess, but she'd knock him back. And now, the trapped girls were being held hostage by Amaryllis' pawns. The Duchess threatened to kill the girls if Iana ran away. In her past life, Iana could bring back dead characters with the wave of a pen. But now, that story was reality, and those who died wouldn't come back. Iana would save Shino from the Duchess's attack. Luckily, when she found the stairs, her shackles came loose, although she might not be able to do anything. But Iana wasn't the same as she was in her past life. Now, she was the extraordinary villainess, Iana Magnolia. Iana claimed to be merely a moldering villainess who conducted evil deeds in secret. She threatened to show her true powers, but this was all a bluff. All she could do was lean into her villainous image. She didn't have any secret powers. Feeling unfazed, Amaryllis sliced off some of her hair. She believed Iana's threats would only make her blood worth more. Before she could land her next attack, the Duchess was stopped by shots from the hydrangea unit. Yamato would then handle things from here. Relieved, Iana fell to her knees, asking how they found this place. Yamato explained it was Konoha who guided them after sensing an unsettling energy from the conservatory. Iana wondered how her sister did this, because her saint powers shouldn't have awakened. With one strike, Yamato would take down the Duchess and arrest her under suspicion of kidnapping and injuring beautiful women. After they evacuated the basement, Shino approached Iana, but she'd immediately yell at him to go get treated, or he might not be able to use his hand. She scolded him for being reckless when saving them, but he argued it was actually her who did the saving. He wouldn't forgive Iana's past crimes, but he admitted her actions this time saved so many beauties, and his little sister was one of them, so he told her to be proud of that. One of his comrades then dragged him off to get treated. While the other nobles saw Iana, they immediately accused her of being the culprit. Then, they praised Konoha for saving the beauties and told her to stay away from the villainess. To Iana's surprise, Konoha and Jennifer didn't suspect her at all. Jennifer then informed Sol that Iana was safe. Upon seeing Sol, she thought her life was over, thinking he would never actually worry about her. After all, that was what got her past self all fired up. Sol was cold to everyone, and only sweet to the one he loved. In the prologue, When Konoha smiled at him, he admitted she was the only one who could throw his heart into disarray. She liked that fluffy feeling of being told she was different from all other women. For Sol, who was created with the belief that the one he loved reigned supreme, all of Iana's actions since the party began would only lead him to suspect her. So she thought this was her end. Following that, everyone saw Amaryllis being escorted out in chains. She had lost her ideal paradise and was now a mere shadow of her former beauty. The nobles couldn't believe that she could actually be the culprit. The Duchess suddenly stopped moving and made a request, asking to have one last sip of wine. It's not like she could escape, so she asked the soldiers to bring the bottle from the very back of the basement wine cellar, saying, "I'd like to go," after reveling in its beautiful flavor. Hearing this, Iana quickly recognized that line. She knew the captured Duchess had long ago made up her mind. If the worst should happen, she would fall beautifully by her own hand. At this moment, Amaryllis was trying to die. Iana would rush in and knock the glass away, asking the Duchess if she planned to go while still covered in her sin. She demanded the Duchess to wash off her filth before having a beautiful end. The Duchess's slaves rushed in to attack Iana, but Sol would swiftly knock them unconscious. Suddenly, he confessed to Iana, saying, "You're the only one who can throw my heart into disarray like this." That was the same line he should have told Konoha. Yamada was then informed that the wine was poisoned. This case was an embarrassment to the royal family, so he wanted to make everything clear before anything got covered up. The next day, the case of the kidnapped beauties that occurred at the Amaryllis ducal residence was declared solved, thanks to Konoha's efforts to lead the police to the basement. Iana was also questioned by the police, but Shino let them know that he had acted together with her, and there was no connection between her and the Duchess. Minoa also let the police know that if Iana was the culprit, she wouldn't have been kidnapped, and that she would have defeated Iana instead. Then, she quickly left after to demand compensation. Iana was shocked that Jennifer kept his promise about keeping the earring a secret. He didn't see the need to tell the police, since she had done nothing to feel guilty about it. Thanks to the three of them, she was cleared of suspicion and allowed to go home. However, on the carriage, Iana could sense incredible rage behind her. Seeing her sister tremble coldly, Konoha asked her what was wrong. Iana robotically answered it was nothing. She couldn't help but wonder if Sol's motivation switch had been triggered. As he extended his hand to help her down from the carriage, she could sense that his rage hadn't quieted one bit. In consideration of Konoha's fatigue, they traveled home at a leisurely pace. Before Iana knew it, 3 days had passed since the incident. When Sol approached her, she tried to get away by helping one of the maids carry a sack, but it was much heavier than she expected. Sol told her that this was work for servants, and carried the sack away. She was left frozen, wondering what could have made him so angry. Returning home, Yomi happily welcomed Iana back with a warm hug, letting her know that his cough had healed. He could tell that she was tired, but she didn't want to mention the incident with the Duchess yet. As Jennifer approached them, they'd suddenly hear Konoha screaming. Rushing to her room, they saw the place in shambles. Sol then met up with them, telling Konoha that he had found one parcel with missing contents, and it just happened to have contained an ornament Konoha received from Jennifer. It was also the same item Iana had been carrying earlier, which made her get a bad feeling about this. Even the servants started suspected she might have stolen the ornament. She would run out of the room to find the ornament, so that she could avoid Sol's suspicions. She dodged every death flag so far. She wasn't about to let this thief get past her. She approached the gardener first, asking if he'd seen anyone suspicious. Startled by her presence, he mistook her for the giant monkey that just passed through. Hearing a strange laughter, she turned around and found a piece of sackcloth. She followed it, and suddenly came across large footprints. The gardener then ran to Sol, informing him about what Iana was doing. As Sol chased after her, Yomi would stop him, asking him to make Konoha find the ornament, since it belonged to her. Whether lost or stolen, he said Konoha should have been more careful. Regardless, Sol simply turned and continued his chase. Meanwhile, Iana felt the reason she was uneasy, even though she had done nothing wrong, was that she was worried about how others saw her. She created Konoha's characters in middle school the way she did because of the portraits they drew in class. Throughout elementary school, her image of herself, based on her own ideas, were 100% realized. She saw herself as a lively girl. But in middle school, because of a wretched portrait assignment, she first learned of how people saw her. When she thought about the way people saw her, weird and perhaps homely, her hands trembled. Trying to glorify herself, she started sweating and couldn't sit still anymore. Afterwards, she'd create a story where her ideal appearance was stylized, whereas her real self was oddly realistic. Whenever she finished the drawing, she'd sigh. Since being reincarnated as Iana, she'd done nothing bad. but thought self-evaluations were unreliable. That's why Iana had to keep working hard to make sure she didn't die from any misunderstandings. She finally caught sight of the monkey and thought it was quite big. She assumed it broke in the moment Konoha left, and likely stole the package that seemed the heaviest, thinking it had the most inside. So, she decided to capture it quickly and get everything back. As she ran towards it with her pitchfork, Soul showed up at that moment to stop her, letting her know that creature wasn't actually a monkey. The creature then attacked her with a magic blast, but Soul grabbed Iana's pitchfork and threw it at the monster, defeating it quickly. Soul then informed her that there was evidence of a monster egg that had hatched recently. He found paint on the broken shell, and speculated that a merchant might have touched it up to sell. That wasn't something a normal person could notice. While he was out of the business now, a long time ago, Soul used to do things like this for assassinations. Hearing this, Iana asked if someone was after her sister, but he couldn't tell for sure. He then asked if she was aware of how dangerous the situation was. She tried to explain, but she was at a loss for words. Soul complained that she was always doing things without telling anyone, and that there was a part of her he didn't understand. Just like the incident with Amaryllis, he asked why she didn't rely on others when she noticed something. He felt she could have told him he was obeying her orders to watch over Konoha, but that was only because she assured him that she'd be safe. As Soul rambled on, Iana thought he was worried about her, and that's why he was probably angry. He told her that this was a warning, and she concluded that he could never be worried about her. Rather, her actions tended to cause problems for her sister, and she assumed his warning meant he'd kill her. Regardless, she promised to be careful next time. Upon finding them, Konoha informed her sister that Shino had arrived, and they needed to come quickly. As they gathered in the room, Shino told them that Amaryllis had killed herself. The motive was unclear. After Iana had stopped the Duchess from poisoning herself, she didn't show any intentions she'd try again. Shino then apologized to Iana for failing to protect the life she saved. The Duchess was always supposed to poison herself at the manor house. By rewriting the story, Iana thought she had changed her fate too, but it was all being corrected silently. Thinking about everyone, she realized if this was the power of her story, then no matter how much she changed it, she couldn't relax. Unbeknownst to them, there was a shadow behind the scenes who had orchestrated the Duchess's death and even planted the monster egg. The future he saw was meant to be vastly more interesting, and he questioned if the one who created this chaos was Konoha or Iana. Iana hoped there would be a different future awaiting her, seeing how the story had changed. But the Duchess's fate reminded her that the changes she made were meaningless. She woke up from that dreadful daydream by the bumpy road they were riding on. Both she and Yomi were tossed around the carriage when they arrived at the resort region of the Dandelion Domain, Daisy Lake. The two were completely out of it. Iana and Konoha were taken in by how pretty and sparkling the sight was. Jennifer mentioned that he often spent time here in his childhood, so he told Iana it'd definitely be relaxing. Iana could tell he noticed that she lacked her usual energy after the incident with Amaryllis. Since then, she's had dark dreams that centered around the fact she couldn't effectively change the story. Soul was also worried, asking if the carriage ride made her feel ill. Iana frantically backed away, claiming nothing was wrong with her in the least. She feared that she had let her guard down, and assumed that Soul was wary of her. Her idea of his inner monologue was, "You're not thinking of causing trouble for Lady Konoha again, are you?" It was only for a moment, but she thought he might have actually been worried about her. Iana wanted everyone to direct their consideration to Konoha instead of her. The thought of Princess Konoha would soothe and heal her. Regardless, she didn't feel right, acting downhearted in front of everyone. After all, she was technically the oldest because of her reincarnation. Yomi requested to go to the lake together with Iana. It had been a while since they were alone together. She got caught off guard by his handsomeness and tried to tell him that everyone else was still here, but he didn't care. So, Iana decided to enjoy herself a little to make everyone less worried about her. While the two sisters were fishing, Konoha caught a little fish. But when she tried to remove the hook, the fish would bite her cheek before falling back into the water. Iana helped her wipe the blood, and then decided to keep Konoha at a very safe distance from the water. Her instinct made her think the lake meant danger, making her body move without realizing it. To apologize, Iana offered to dig up a fish pond on the spot. By the time she saw what was happening, it was already too late. The story would progress just like it did for the Duchess. That was why she wanted to nip those signs in the bud before they'd ever become incidents. Iana didn't know when the story would create another incident or what it might be. Suddenly, someone called out to them from behind, asking for help because a person had collapsed. Returning to the mansion, they explained the situation to Jennifer. Iana had noticed earlier, but she thought the boy in front of her was as beautiful as an angel, probably second to Konoha. His beauty was blinding, However, she felt he had nothing to do with the dark history story. She hoped he wouldn't get abducted because of his looks. Afterwards, Sol reported that the person they saved wasn't in mortal danger. However, he believed it'd be best to monitor him for a while. Seeing that the person was an elf, Jennifer mentioned that they hardly came into human settlements. Sol advised that they investigate the area before releasing the elf. Elves were strong and beautiful. They could use swords, magic, bows, and arrows. A truly all-powerful race. In Iana's middle school fantasies, they were absolutely essential. The odd illustrations in her notebook were generally elves. She used to imagine meeting an elf whenever they went mountain climbing. One day, after school, while her classmates laughed at her, she pitied them for not knowing the beauty of elves. Because they were a different race from humans, even though she was still fantasizing about hot guys, there was something special about them for her. But now, she couldn't remember what that specialty was. She'd bump into the little boy, tugging on her dress, and asking if he could come here again. She was instantly blinded by his beauty. Konoha then told him it was alright for him to come, and she introduced herself. The younger boy then said his name was Kagura Ivy. Afterwards, it was decided that the elf, Shukuna, would stay at the mansion to rest and recuperate. In the beginning, Shukuna was wary of them, but Konoha's smile and her admirable attitude softened his heart little by little. He felt that she was pure and honest to a mystifying degree. Soon after, Sol confirmed there were no hunters in the area and offered to escort Shukuna back, seeing that his wounds had healed. But Jennifer decided they'd all escort him together, especially since Konoha would miss him. Shukuna told them they couldn't allow humans to know the location of the elven village, so he asked that they escort him part way. Once they reached a certain point, humans weren't allowed to go beyond that, due to an agreement that humans and elves had made in the past. As Shukuna left, Iana suddenly got an ominous feeling, and a strange image flashed in her head. In the real story, a wounded elvish man would come seeking Konoha's help. In the hidden elvish village, separated from the human lands, the stake that had sealed away their former adversary, the vampire, had loosened and disintegrated over the course of many years. The vampires attacked the villagers, one after another, and the victims would turn into vampires. The young elf who went to find help was in tatters when he finally found his way to Konoha. She promised to do anything she could to help, but when they traveled to the elven village, they only saw tragedy. There was no remaining trace of the elves' beauty. They had already become monsters, driven by the vampiric urges. Since saintly blood was unaffected by vampiric transformation, Konoha succeeded in defeating the vampires and returned the elves to their original forms. But after protecting Konoha from a vampire who made one final attack, the young elvish man died. Iana then recalled that the elves only came up in one arc of her stories, and eventually, the vampire incident would happen. Yakura mentioned wanting to sneak into the elf village, but she quickly refused it. The others were shocked by her sudden behavior, but Iana simply explained that it could be dangerous to go there. Yagura would then return home. In Amaryllis' story, there were foreshadows of the beauty's kidnapping. This time, Iana thought the young elvish man, Shukuna, was that sign. But if he was, he wouldn't have left without taking Konoha with him. In terms of the dark history, they were still in the opening stages. The incident occurred partway after Konoha gained her true powers. Since there hadn't been any foreshadowing, Iana thought they still had plenty of time. Hence, if she went to the village at this point and fixed the seal, then maybe this time she'd be able to stop the vampire incident from happening. While sneaking out in the middle of the night, Iana thought she heard Konoha's voice calling her name, but it seemed to be her imagination. Still, she questioned if a seal could be fixed with tools, considering she grabbed all kinds of things from the storehouse. If this incident was like the time with Duchess Amaryllis, then it might happen all at once as soon as there's a sign. But that was why she needed to move quickly before it would escalate. Sol would catch her sneaking out, causing Iana to panic. He stated that people possessed a quality called the ability to learn. Avoiding things such as pain, anxiety, and fear was the form it naturally took, because if people didn't learn, they'd die. Iana asked if he knew what she was trying to do. She understood that he might be worried and angry about the way her actions affected Konoha, but she begged him not to kill her yet. Stating that this was the only option, he asked her to take him along, and if she didn't agree, he'd come regardless. She was okay with it, but on the condition he'd stand beside her, and not behind her. Iana wasn't really a big fan of horseback riding, even though she had ridden so many times. Out of nowhere, Yomi would show up, asking her to ride with him instead. Giving her a tight hug, he stated that he came to protect her, and with this, he and Sol would shoot deadly glares at each other. Meanwhile, the man behind the scenes was secretly watching everything unfold. He thought Iana was foolish, believing there was nothing she could do. Iana had left a note for her sister, telling her to relax with Jennifer in the meantime. She didn't want Konoha to suffer because of her plans. Soon after, they arrived at the beautiful elvish village. Since ancient times, the elves had been the race that was closest to the gods. According to Sol, it was said that if they didn't live in a pure, holy sanctuary, their hearts grew twisted. Iana felt embarrassed hearing him read out the lore she wrote. He then asked her what brought her to the village, surprised that she already knew how to enter. Before she could answer, Yomi pointed out there were two paths. One went to a residential area, and one went past temples and graveyards. Iana decided to go towards the graveyards. Yomi suddenly threatened to kill Sol if he was being a nuisance. So, she quickly stopped him, letting him know that she still needed to cook up a meal of established trust. She was able to get Yomi to settle down like a good boy. In the story, a combination of Sol and Yomi never happened. There was no telling how things would turn out if Iana wasn't careful. She couldn't make Sol any more suspicious of her than he already was. But seeing the way she spoke to Yomi, he wasn't the least bit happy about it. He then asked for his orders, while Iana was left confused as to why he looked upset. They would arrive at the entrance of a cave, which was a forbidden area. Sol would take the branch from Iana and lead them inside. This time, Iana swore to protect Konoha from the story, no matter what happens, and prevent the vampire episode from happening in the village. Sol noticed a strange presence below them. He warned that going any further would be dangerous, but she insisted on going ahead. The depths of the underground extended from the graveyard. Once, when the elves were on the brink of annihilation, they sealed away the body of evil that caused their plight in this place. Possessed of a resilient body and a long lifespan, the vampire used charms and fangs to trample over others, and this was his tomb. They came across huge bloody stains on the ground and walls. Examining it, Sol mentioned it was still fairly fresh, meaning it hadn't been here long. He and Yomi noticed there were signs of struggle as well. It was as if someone splashed blood all around. Iana still pressed forward, despite their warnings. The incident itself happened to be far in the future, in a different episode. She just wanted to check on the seal that would become the sign, and then go home. But she was shocked to see that the vampire's tomb was open. As Iana rushed to the tomb, Sol held her back, warning that she could get hurt if she blindly rushed off in a panic. When she told him to let her go, he asked if she knew what she saw in the tomb, but she refused to elaborate. Yomi then held Sol back, reminding him that he was just a servant who needed to keep quiet and follow along. Sol tried to explain that he was trying to protect Iana by understanding what she was thinking, but Yomi doubted he was doing this for Iana's sake. When Iana was in middle school, she learned how important it was to take action to get ahead of things. One day, she was rushing to get a ticket for some limited edition merch. She begged the gods to be able to buy one, but even when they said there were plenty of tickets, the curse wouldn't break. Back then, if they said the tickets would go on sale tomorrow at 3, she worried that when she arrived, they would say the time changed to 1:30, so the sales had finished. She often had nightmares about it, and right now, she felt like she was having one of those nightmares again. Iana wondered if there was some kind of sign after they arrived at the resort, and if she had simply not seen it. The timing for all this was far too perfect. Arriving at the residential area, she noticed no one was around. Suddenly, some elves approached, but they had all been turned into vampires. They started chasing her as she ran away. Eventually, she'd hit one of them away. Then, remembered these lower vampires could only follow their instincts, so they shouldn't be very strong. She believed she'd be able to handle it alone. Suddenly, Kagura came running towards her, crying out for help. In that moment of distraction, she got pinned down by a vampire, struggling to bite at her. Yomi would come to her rescue, using his magic to blast away the vampires, and Sol as well, defeating them with his sword. Iana then rushed to Kagura, comforting him with a hug. It was much harder to move than she thought it'd be. Everything had worked out so far, so she thought it would all be fine now, too. Struggling to stand, Yomi would lend her his hand, reminding her she wasn't alone. Iana realized the only thing she could do was read ahead in the story to see what might happen. She wasn't so powerful to be able to do everything by herself. After getting back on her feet, she told Sol and Yomi that the village had been attacked by vampires, and that unless they acted, even the human towns and Konoha could be in danger. Yomi and Sol agreed to help. The vampires' powers were tremendous, and Iana had no way of knowing how these characters, who weren't a saint like Konoha, would fare against them, but she was certain everything would be alright. As she ran off to locate the original vampire, they were chased by the elves who'd been turned, but the only way to defeat them was to defeat the original. In middle school, there was a small part of Iana who loved the idea of being bitten by a gorgeous vampire. She'd spend all day fantasizing about a beautiful vampire man, sinking his fangs into her, and being forcibly made into his property. She just adored it. Oh no. Is that why you guys like Diabolic Lovers so much? But now that it was all reality, Iana realized her life was more important than all that adoration. Yomi and Sol suggested they find a place to hide for a while because they could easily be overwhelmed by the number of vampires. Suddenly, the vampires would start talking about devouring Konoha's blood. Hearing this, Sol began taking them out until Shukuna signaled them to come over. The elf would close the secret door to keep out the vampires. Iana was shocked to see him, considering she thought he was the same elf who died in the main story. As Shukuna led them forward, he explained that the only way of defeating the vampires was either purification by a saint's powerful abilities or a cross through the heart. All thanks to Iana, since she was the one who wrote it that way. However, Shukuna believed his kin weren't to blame and that they were victims. Sol argued they didn't have much of a choice because the vampires spoke of devouring Konoha. Even Shukuna was surprised by Konoha's purity of spirit. The energy that surrounded her was sacredness itself. Vampires, by nature, were drawn to innocent blood, which was most likely why they were drawn to Konoha, who was very much like a saint. Depending on the circumstances, the master vampire might decide to take her as his consort. However, what he didn't know was that Konoha's blood had the power to suppress vampire transformations, so she'd never turn into one herself. Iana would collapse, thinking about how she created all this. She then mentioned destroying the vampire master, but Shukuna claimed it was too dangerous. Plus, it would soon be night, and that was when the vampire's power was at its strongest. Sol suddenly threatened to split Shukuna's mouth open if he didn't tell them where to find the master. You know guys, I saw this meme recently where it points out the various Sasuke archetypes across anime. I think it's fair to label this guy fanfiction Sasuke. That aside, he got Shukuna to reveal the vampire was at the largest temple in the village. Iana wondered why Sol was acting this way, especially when he seemed a bit gentler before they came to the village. Meanwhile, Yomi was in a surprisingly good mood. Beyond the door in front of them was the chapel, where a few survivors were hiding. Shukuna suggested they rest there for a while. As they entered, he commended Iana and the others for being strong, unlike himself, who watched helplessly as everyone got turned into vampires. He didn't feel strong and never knew anyone who was. Shukuna felt it was because he was like this that he couldn't remember how he got injured in the human village. Iana comforted him, letting him know that there was still meaning in him being here, and leading them to the temple's chapel. Suddenly, he'd bite her neck, revealing he was a vampire all along. Not only that, but he decided to become a vampire purposely, since he was so powerless before. He'd lock Iana and Sol inside the room, hoping she'd turn into a vampire and become the bait needed to lure Konoha. Yomi tried to use his remaining magical energy to unlock the door, but upon touching the seal, it blurred his senses. Meanwhile, Iana kept her distance from Sol so that she wouldn't harm him in case she began transforming. According to the lore, those bitten by the master vampire retain their self-awareness and become child vampires. Those who are bitten by child vampires would become grandchild vampires with no consciousness or reason. And that was exactly what Iana was about to become. If she went on to become a vampire, she'd bite Sol without knowing what she was doing, and that would trigger a death flag. Iana didn't want to harm Sol, and she also wanted to survive. So she panicked, thinking of how to break out of this dead end. Looking at the stake in her hand, she wondered if there was some kind of gimmick to it. While she analyzed it, Sol saw her holding it up and feared she was about to kill herself. He'd stop her by pinning her to the ground. But Iana thought he had realized she was trying to run away. Her heart raced as she apologized, when suddenly she smelled a faint scent of blood. In the temple, Shukuna explained to the Vampire King how he planned to lure Konoha using Iana. The king saw Iana as wicked and full of chaotic energy, but with her still being a woman, he decided to go meet her in person. Iana's transformation would be completed as she told Sol that Konoha's blood was what was most important to her. The elves had become the Vampire King's underlings, and now all that remained for him was to make Konoha his consort. So he put Iana to work, and she was delighted to oblige. He was surprised that she still retained her identity after being bitten by Shukuna. Shukuna noticed Sol in the room, and Iana explained that she had bitten him to keep him silent, since having Sol as an enemy would be troublesome. Shukuna thought she was stupid and assumed she was trying to curry favor by selling out someone close to her. The Vampire King hoped Konoha would also be easy to attain, but Shukuna doubted it. He saw her as gentle, yet strong-willed, and although she seemed like a helpless young woman, Konoha had stubbornly persisted when Shukuna resisted getting treatment. With her slender arms, she brought him back with her when he collapsed. Though Shukuna was afraid of humans, Konoha melted his heart by stubbornly persisting in speaking to him. In the human settlement, her smile and heart were all that saved him. so he was sure she'd surely resist. The Vampire King and all his underlings became even more excited after listening to Shukuna. He decided they would lure Konoha to the village, where he'd sink his fangs into her and make her his obedient bride. With this, they'd rejoice in the complete resurrection of the Vampire King and a shining future. That's when Soul would appear behind him, using his blade to slice up the Vampire King. With his wounds burning, he commanded Iana to silence Soul, but she impaled him with a stake instead. This was their plan from the beginning. 1 hour earlier, Iana's transformation was almost complete, and she could smell blood. Then, she remembered that the handkerchief she used to wipe Konoha's blood during the fishing trip was still in her pocket. So, she came up with a plan to save the elven village. In the main story, Konoha, who had been fighting the vampires, protected her friends and ended up captured as a result. The Vampire King tried to make the lovely Konoha his own by sinking his fangs into every inch of her body. However, Konoha's saintly blood protected her, preventing her from turning into a vampire. In fact, the Vampire King who had drunk the blood was affected by its purifying powers and was rendered unable to move, and that was how Konoha was able to make the Vampire King surrender. So, Iana decided to take a chance on Konoha's blood, which she still had on a handkerchief. The blood carried the power to purify. If she dissolved it in holy water from the chapel and drank it, she would be able to slow her transformation into a vampire. The Vampire King wondered why the stake left him unable to move, and Iana explained that the stake and Soul's knife had the powerful medicines sprinkled onto them. For a pure vampire like him, it was the worst poison. Although she wasn't able to introduce him to her sister, she'd gladly introduce him to the Grim Reaper. The Vampire King then offered to make her his consort if she saved his life, but he didn't fit Iana's preferences at all. Just as she would use an eraser to turn a notebook page to pure white, she had to erase this character. Soul then informed her that Shukuna had collapsed. His vampiric transformation had been undone, and the rest of the elves had also returned to normal. Iana then acknowledged that she was saved because Soul chose to help her. Because he trusted her, she found the courage to dive right in, and it made her happy. She thanked him, but Soul didn't feel worthy of her words of gratitude. She panicked, thinking she had to be super careful about his feelings. She didn't want him to feel on edge around her. Then, she recalled Yomi and Kagura was still on the other side of the door. At this point, she hadn't realized yet. Iana thought she'd gotten ahead of this incident, but when she opened the door, she would find Yomi bleeding out on the floor. When she tried to stop the bleeding, he held her hand, insisting he was fine. Soul noticed that his wound wasn't from a vampire attack. As Yomi tried to explain who did it, Kagura would show up behind Iana, surprised to see that she and Soul were still alive. He wished they had let themselves be obliterated in the village, because he was looking forward to seeing them writhe in agony. As Soul attacked him, Kagura immediately blocked it. Kagura mentioned that if it wasn't for them, Konoha's powers would have awakened. Iana wondered if he had some kind of inside information, and if he was a part of the dark history. Kagura then revealed he was the one who attacked Shukuna and dumped him near the human settlement. When Iana asked who he was, he called her a useless villain and questioned if she would try to stop him if she knew. In this world, he claimed the only ones who were in the right were them, the Schwartz, Les Chevaliers. Kagura didn't mind letting her have the win for today. He felt it wouldn't be much fun to kill her outright, and looked forward to playing with her next time, and then vanished. Iana was left questioning who the Schwartz Les Chevaliers were, and what was happening in the story. Kagura was then scolded by his comrades for going off and acting on his own, but he didn't care about gaining anything. Iana never ceased to get in his way, and because of that, he wanted her to suffer as much as possible before he killed her. However, given how well protected the Saint was, they needed to rethink their next moves, because they wanted to offer Saint Konoha to Universum. The next morning, when Iana and the rest returned in such horrible condition, Konoha and Jennifer put off their questions until later, and had a doctor look at them. Soul had only scrapes, and Iana was bitten on the neck. As for Yomi, the doctor mentioned there wouldn't be any danger to his life. However, he had expended a tremendous amount of magic, making his immune system weak. The doctor suggested treating him somewhere with proper facilities. He told Iana that exploiting a magic practitioner could endanger their life, and warned that people's lives were not her playthings. To everyone's surprise, Iana accepted that her actions put everyone in harm's way. She sought out the hidden village when everyone tried to stop her, so she humbly apologized for her actions. Jennifer suddenly called her over to discuss, and left the rest for Konoha to handle. This incident differed from the ones that had happened so far. The story Iana had tried to get ahead of and stop had actually gotten ahead of her, and happened anyway. The dark history book would have been destroyed when she reincarnated, so she didn't know how any of this had happened. But this time, she heard Soul, Yomi, and Kagura's stories. Recalling what Kagura said, she wondered if this was all a plot to make Konoha awaken as a saint. She didn't know who Kagura was, but knew for certain that something beyond her capacity to handle on her own was targeting Konoha. When she got into the room with Jennifer, he asked if Yomi spoke truthfully about the attack. He would ask Sol for a report later, but he wanted to hear her own version of the events. She wondered if he'd be suspicious of her again. Meanwhile, Sol recalled Iana asking for both his and Yomi's help. In that moment, when Yomi pointed out that everything was planned by Iana, Sol suspected that she had failed to control the elves and brought on those circumstances. Half a year ago, he accepted an assassination request from Jennifer. Sol was deeply suspicious, even after he rescinded the request. But the moment he saw Iana trying to take her own life after being bitten by a vampire, his mind became conflicted about her. Konoha would approach him, asking if he was worried about something. She found it strange, because when they first met, she could have never imagined such a thing. But given the person he'd been lately, it seemed natural to her. He tried to deny it, but she told him there was no need. It was normal for people to worry about things, and she thought it meant there was an answer he was trying to find. Konoha hoped Sol wouldn't try to shut out his uncertainty, because that was his heart. Back with Iana, she explained to Jennifer that she went to the elven village out of curiosity. She couldn't tell him that Konoha was a saint, or that she was trying to get ahead of events to stop them. She also mentioned that Kagura attacked Yomi and was targeting Konoha. As he shot her a glare, Iana panicked, wondering if she would regret withholding some information. Surprisingly, he'd pat her head, letting her know she didn't need to be afraid anymore. He asked her to tell Sol and Yomi to protect her to the end if they chose to follow her, although he couldn't praise her reckless behavior. Seeing how she apologized in front of everyone and spoke honestly, he wanted to reward her feelings. So, he assured Iana that he would protect Konoha to the very end, no matter who was targeting her. Of course, she knew better than anyone else about Jennifer's kindness and strength. When she was in middle school, she wrote that the catalyst for Konoha traveling was Jennifer's coma. It was all idealistic talk, but it was also true that with Jennifer around, the story wouldn't progress. He was basically good at everything, which meant if he was there, he'd solve everything. But now, as long as Jennifer wasn't in a coma, he would always protect Konoha. He was her all-powerful hero. He then suggested they make some dessert for a little change of pace. Iana started overthinking the whole thing, but she was eager to do it. She could do anything if she was with him. Konoha and Sol would rush into the kitchen after hearing a huge noise. It turned out that Iana's cooking specs couldn't handle the ingredients of this world, and Jennifer couldn't cook because she wrote him that way. When Sol kicked them out, Iana begged to at least clean, so he offered to give her an all-day special training, leaving her speechless. Iana would then bring the dessert for Yomi, but he wasn't happy to hear that it was made by Konoha and Sol. He'd only eat it if Iana fed him. Iana was sure there was a mountain of things she'd have to think about in the future. But when Jennifer suggested treating Yomi in his family home, she got the feeling she would have more to think about there. Okay, not a bad ending. It's a little open-ended if they want to do a second season. Overall, I think the show was pretty okay. Had an interesting start, but ultimately went nowhere for the most part. But what do you guys think? Subscribe for more content. And also, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.